Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Saturday, April the 5th. And as we like to do, we'll be chatting with my good friend, George Rodriguez from South Texas. George, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you
It's
very much for inviting me.
always our pleasure to have you. And according to my, this is how we all check the temperature these days, these little machines.
Yes.
According to that, it feels like 45. But according to me, it feels a lot colder than that. How is it down there?
Yeah, it is. In fact, that's exactly what I was doing. I was checking my own. It's supposed to be 69. We've got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, which means it feels more like 58.
Right.
And this evening, it is supposed to get down. In fact, this evening and tomorrow evening, it's supposed to get down to the lower 40s.
Oh, really?
So,
wow.
yeah, tomorrow the high tomorrow is only supposed to be 61. So
Wow.
we've got a cold front here, and
Well, very similar because it says up here that tonight it's gonna the winds are gonna make it feel like it's 43. So not too different from up here. But anyway, that's like they say, if you don't like the Texas weather, wait 20 minutes. It sure feels that way. But George, I got a few things to get into today. We're going to talk about this new book that came out. It just came out, but I've seen quite a few interviews. I haven't read the book, but based on a lot of the interviews, it really raises questions about the credibility of not just the media, but some of the Democrats who protected President Biden's decline. But let me begin with something that happened 57 years ago. You and I remember, I guess, benefits of being a little older, I guess. And that's the assassination of Martin Luther King. Actually, it happened the day before, April 4th. But, April 5th, of course, we were all recovering from it. And I got the news. I was at home. I just got a call from a high school or a ninth grade buddy of mine or whatever saying that the assassination had taken place. I couldn't believe it. I sat in front of the TV the whole night. I don't think I ever went to bed at all, and did go to school, of course, the next day. But any memories of his assassination? Like, what were you doing? Where were you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember it very, very clearly. My parents and I had gone to a movie, I believe, and we were just getting back, and we heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
That it had happened. The next day, I remember very clearly that the number of riots that broke out.
Right.
Very, very violent. Among the worst was in Washington, D.C. And I remember that the situation there was particularly bad because so much of the rioting took place just blocks from the White House.
Right.
And that really, and to me, that truly cemented the fall of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Because they appeared to be very, very just unable to stop that. And then they had the riots during their convention. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats just looked very, very helpless. President Johnson, not only did he look like he was responsible for the death of Martin Luther King. I mean, a couple of months later, we had the death of Robert Kennedy.
Well, that's what I was going to say next. And another memory that I have of that night, maybe not that night, but in the next day or whatever, was watching Robert Kennedy react to the assassination. Right. And, him talking about, he had a campaign appearance, I guess, and he spoke about the assassination. It was such a difficult moment. Of course, President Johnson had just said a few days before that he wasn't seeking re-election. So he was, I'm pretty sure, recovering from that announcement that he wasn't going to be seeking re-election. But it just seemed like at the time that a very brutal thing, and I remember the riots and all of that. And again, when you have these riots, you don't quite, at least in my mind, you don't connect, why would you loot businesses and restaurants in your own community?
I think that was the disturbing part about it. I remember my parents being very critical of watching the looting of businesses.
Yes,
the looting and burning of businesses in their community.
Exactly. And I remember something else too, that I don't remember this, but I read about it later, that the baseball season in Washington at the time the Senators were there, that those games were delayed, or at least for several days they were canceled because of all the insecurity. Also in Detroit as well, I think Chicago as well. So several teams simply did not open the season on time. They didn't want to risk having fans drive to the stadium, particularly in the inner city if the stadiums were downtown. So it was just a horrible day. And I have a post about it today over at the American Thinker. And the question that has always haunted me over the years is, if Martin Luther King had lived, what would he be saying about the state of Black America today? Now, to be fair, he was born in 1929, so that means he would be in his mid 90s now. Maybe he wouldn't have lived this long, but he would have lived long enough, I think, George, to see the total collapse of the Black family, the collapse of these Black communities, how mismanaged these communities are. So I cannot think that he would have been happy with it, George.
I agree 100%. I think that one of the things that we saw with the civil rights movement, and it's a documented fact by sociologists, was the fleeing of the Black middle class from the Black community. It was a situation where the minute that they had an opportunity to leave the Black community, they voted with their feet. And the two things that I think he would be upset about is, first of all, like you said, the rise of the poverty culture, which includes the disintegration of the family, no fathers, generational poverty. I think that he would be very upset about that. But equally, I think he would be upset by the rise of political Black bosses. People who want to maintain and use racism as an excuse to keep people on programs, to keep them dependent.
Right.
And I think that he would be very, very upset with that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's speculation on my part about. Yeah, it's all speculation. We don't know, but I just have a funny feeling. I think he was a man of higher standards, and I think he would have been. I just cannot believe that he would have been happy.
He wanted integration, not segregation.
Exactly, and I think he also. I mean, look, he was a father, a husband, and I'm sure that he would have looked down, I think, on what's happened. But anyway, speaking of the culture of, or speaking of the civil rights movement, we have a congresswoman, as you know, Congresswoman Crocket, who seems to be making news every time she talks. And I don't exactly know when she recorded this, whether it just happened or recently, but she was on a talk show and went after Representative Byron McDonalds of Florida, who's a well-known Black conservative who's running for governor of Florida and has a pretty good chance of winning, actually. And she went after him and talked about the fact that, he married a white woman, which is, of course, for you and I, those are, memories of at a time when that was not permitted in many southern states. But it just brought back, exactly everything that is wrong, it seems to me, with the Black leadership, this obsession that they have with race rather than solving problems, George.
I mean, to me, it epitomizes Black liberal racism. It really does. I mean, for her to echo the same comments that you would have heard from some Southern redneck Ku Klux Klan supporter in the 1920s, it shows her stupidity. It shows her shallowness. I mean, we just talked about Dr. Martin Luther King, who said that we should, who encouraged people to judge each other by not by the color of their skin. That's exactly what she is doing. That is exactly what she is encouraging.
Right.
She wants. I mean, she is very proud that she has accomplished what she has because of her race, not because of her abilities. And it's very obvious at this point by the shallowness of her thinking and speaking that that truly is the case. I mean, she has accomplished what she has, obviously, by affirmative action, not because of her smarts.
Right. Well, I'm disappointed to hear something like that from a self-appointed civil rights leader. That's the other thing.
Really, it shows the failure of the civil rights movement.
I agree. And you mentioned the Ku Klux Klan. I don't think it was that far back. I mean, I think if you go to the 60s and 70s, there were states in the Old South that still made biracial marriage illegal. I remember, speaking of President Johnson, one of his daughters, I believe, married a black man. I think it was one of the two. I don't remember which one. Married a black man, and they lived there in Virginia for a long time. I think he was a military man, actually. And, to me, it's so sad when a person like Jasmine Crocket, when she brings up the issue of race, and also, George, the hypocrisy of these people, because the Supreme Court Justice Jackson, she's married to a white man. I think there's others,
and so is Kamala.
Kamala, that's right. I forgot about that. Kamala Harris,
I mean,
is married to a white man. So
why not preach at them?
Yes, and that's right. I forgot about former Vice President Harris, who was married to a white man, and then I think there's others in the movement who are married to people of another race. And it seems to me that was an issue, George, that I thought we had settled a long time ago. I mean, to me, that's an issue that I thought we had settled many years ago.
It really shows her ignorance.
It does.
I will not excuse her at all for making such a racist.
That's right.
Comment.
Right. And in some of the other things too that she has said about Elon Musk, he said somebody, I guess for a birthday present, somebody take out Elon Musk. Well, she's playing, word games. She was saying, well, I didn't mean kill him. Well, she probably didn't, but that's what some people may interpret that she wants them to do, And so it's just so sad to see somebody using her position in Congress instead of helping her community. That district could use a lot of help. Believe me, that district
she should represents, be encouraging her constituents to not shoot each other. She should encourage them to stay in school. She should encourage them to listen and learn, even if the schools are bad. Maybe support school
choice.
She should be doing many things other than shooting off her mouth the way she is.
Well, another thing that she ought to be doing is encouraging young people in her district to get married and have children, so that because that's another big problem
for the children that they're having.
That's right. I mean, that's right.
I mean, they are having children. Are they responsible for the children they are having?
Exactly. And I mean, you can disagree. I mean, Jasmine Crocket can disagree with Byron McDonalds all she wants, but by every information I have, Donalds is a good husband and a good father, and somebody who's doing it the right way. And it's just so disappointing to see black leaders like this who don't seem to, or it's just so disappointing to have this discussion in 2025.
Well, and equally disturbing to me is how you cannot have this discussion in some media arenas, because they will accuse you of being a racist for criticizing her.
Well, that's the other thing too, that she thinks that she's like protected from criticism.
Correct.
Because any criticism of her is immediately racist. But then she can turn around and make an outrageously racist statement about Byron McDonalds. I mean, it's just so sad. It's really sad. And I would recommend to Jasmine Crocket to take a little time off and really focus on her district. That's what I would do, because her district could really use a lot of investment. And her district, The public schools are the worst in the area. The crime is I mean, her district, every time you turn on the TV at night and you hear about a crime, it's in her district. Unfortunately, that's where all of this is. And Byron McDonalds did challenge her to a debate. That would be great. I would love to see that. I would love to see a debate between those two.
Yeah, it would be very, very good, but I guarantee that it's not going to happen because first of all, the media will say, the liberals will protect her by saying that he's going to pick on a woman. But then the second thing is that all of her arguments would evaporate completely and totally.
Yeah, well, look, I've seen Donald's debate. He was on the Joey Reid show one time, and I don't think she invited.
She upset them. Yeah, she upset them because, again, I mean, liberals tend to play the race game.
Right.
The minority liberals play the race game very poorly, and it's very easy to expose. I mean, when I was Tea Party president in San Antonio, I debated either one of the Castro twins. I said, I'll debate either one of you, because at that point, neither one, Joaquin was not a congressman and Julian was just on the city council. So, they couldn't say anything like, well, it would be beneath us. But yet they would not debate. They would not, Univision our local wanted a discussion on issues. And they wouldn't go on Univision because they couldn't speak Spanish. So.
Well, anyway, what a shame. What a shame to have, a conversation or accuse a fellow African-American, if I could put it that way, of being married to a white woman. My gosh, what a crime that used to be, I guess, but not anymore. Well, speaking of school choice, it does look from an article that I read that they've got everything lined up in the House. So hopefully, I'm not exactly sure how the timing is, but I'm hoping they can get it to the governor very soon so he can sign it and we can have school choice finally in Texas, George.
And, again, I'm still kind of very curious and worried as to how it's going to look. I want it to have as much, maximum impact. But we shall see. I'm happy that it's moving along, and I'm very, very hopeful that it'll get done very quickly.
Well, at least they got the votes to at least even talk about it. The last time, there were some Republicans who held out, and that's why they had to, we had to get the election behind us to fix that. But I'm hoping, I mean, look, my definition of school choice is very simple. I mean, if you don't like the school you're in, we'll give you a voucher and you can find one of your choice. It's as simple as that. People say
if it is kept that simple, I'd be very happy. I'll be
well, of course, it's probably not going to be quite that simple, but I'd like it to be as close to that as possible. You're always going to hear from the Democrats that it's a subsidy of the rich, but the fact is that the rich right now have the choice to send their kids to the private schools, and most of them do. I assume that that's what they do.
They do. I mean, if you can afford, if a rich person that lives in near a public school that they just don't like, they have no hesitancy in sending the child to a private school.
Well, and by the way, speaking of private schools, I read recently that Jasmine Crocket went to a
private school. Yes,
private schools when she was growing up. So
she's an arrogant liberal elitist.
She is. She really is.
I will say that.
Well, another big story this week, George, and I have not read the book, but everybody's talking.
Everybody seems to be reading it for us.
Yeah, that's it. That's the amazing thing about these books come out, and the authors do so many interviews. It's on so many places that you feel like you've read the book.
Exactly. Because
so many people analyze it. But a couple of people wrote a book about the 2024 election. And it's a couple of things. It's about the condition of President Biden and the campaign of Vice President Harris. And let's talk about the campaign first. According to the book, on the night of the election, George, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz thought they were going to win. They were like shocked. They were in a state of shock that they didn't win the election. And apparently their people were telling them, hey, everything looks great. You're going to win. So that's pretty shocking to me. But that's what they, according to the book, that's what happened. Also, speaking of Vice President Harris, apparently there was a lot of tension. I don't know if you've heard some of the interviews, but there was a lot of tension between Vice President Harris and President Obama.
Yep. Yeah. I really, what the thing, well, the example of them thinking that they were going to win on election night. We spoke about it a few moments ago about the role of the fake news, the
media.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is a result of the fake media pushing a narrative, and the liberals themselves being so insecure that they wrap themselves around it.
Right.
I mean, they were so elite that they never got out into the communities to talk to people, nor did they have any. I mean, Kamala certainly never had very many town hall meetings or anything of the nature, and that's why they were caught off guard, because they weren't in touch with real people.
Well, as far as Vice President Harris, she never had a press conference. Yeah. She never, and the town hall, she did a town hall, but it was all I think it was with Oprah Winfrey.
It was very orchestrated, very well orchestrated.
And the debate that they had on ABC, I mean, my gosh, you didn't have to be a genius to realize who ABC was favoring.
Exactly.
I mean, I think ABC hurt itself more than anything in that debate. So I am still almost like in shock myself that you have a candidate run for office, for president of the United States, and think that she, in this case, could do a campaign for president without doing a press conference. That is, right. or for that matter,
again, Silvio, to me, that is arrogance and elitism in a nutshell. Right. Because they feel entitled to be elected. They feel that they just know what's good and what's going to happen.
Right.
And it comes as a real shock to them when it doesn't.
Right. And I would say a perfect storm of arrogance and
yes. And the media is right there, part of the problem, the fake news.
Well, and that leads us to the other part of the book, which is President Biden's cognitive condition. Is that what they call it? I don't want to say mental, because it's not a mental problem, but I'm just saying I want to be polite.
His advanced stage of problem.
Yes. And what is obvious to everybody, this is if you listen to the authors of this book, everybody knew this. You had
we knew it and we were watching it.
Yes.
We knew it and we were watching.
Well, that's right. We were watching the guy every 3 months on TV, and we knew there was a problem.
Yep.
Well, apparently there's a story in the book that this representative from California, the Solwell, whatever his name is, went to the White House in the summer of 2023 to visit with the president. And, he walked away saying, what is wrong with this man? There's something wrong with this man. He doesn't even know who I am. And he had run against him in 2020 in the primaries. So obviously you had Democrats protecting him in the White House, which raises the question, and Newt Gingrich was saying this the other day, who was the president? Who was actually...
right.
Yeah,
we talked about the auto pen. We talked about the auto pen.
Yes, the auto pen.
A couple of weeks ago, you and I, and who was handling it. And it's very obvious at this point by the book that it certainly was being done independently of the president, and that should bring into question legality of everything that was signed by that man.
Well, and then you have Newt Gingrich was saying there ought to be an investigation, a Senate House investigation, because clearly, like you indicated, some of those documents, did he even know that he was signing them? Probably not.
That's right.
Probably not. But the other big scandal in the book, and I'm glad that these two reporters are honest enough to bring this up. I think one of them is called Jonathan. One of them is Jonathan Allen, who I believe I had seen his name in the past with Politico. I think that's who he used to be with, or maybe he's still with. And then there's the lady who wrote the book with him. I didn't know anything about. Her name didn't mean anything to me when I heard it. I didn't have any reference to her. But to me, the real scandal, George, is not the Democrats were protecting him. The real scandal was that the media, or so many in the media, were protecting him. They had to know. They had to know.
That really, really is disturbing to me.
Yes,
because
should be.
While we were watching it and we were assuming it, and we were, obviously, pretty much the assumption was pretty much based on a clear observation. The media went out of its way to defend him.
Yes.
And to deny it,
to protect him.
To protect him. It is the role of the media is not to protect the president. I'm sorry. The role of the media is to question policy, to protect the citizens, to protect freedom.
Right.
And that is everything but what they did.
Right. And I was listening to Hugh Hewitt the other day, and Hugh Hewitt, for over a year, had been calling for the 25th Amendment. He said there was plenty of grounds a year ago, and before the book and before the election, plenty of grounds for the 25th Amendment to be exercised. And that, I think, is the other scandal, too. We may want to, one of the reasons that I like to see the Senate and the House look into this is not so much to punish Biden, because I think history is going to take care of him. But I think it's important for the American people to know, and that is, what should trigger the 25th Amendment? I mean, because up to now, it's just been a piece of paper. It's just been a theoretical thing. It's an amendment. And it has been used a couple of times, as you remember from being in the White House, when President Reagan was being operated, and then later in the second President Bush, when he was being operated one time, that amendment was temporarily, the presidency was temporarily passed to Vice President Cheney. But I think that there needs to be a conversation in the country. There needs to be a more objective standard for when a president or the 25th Amendment should be turned on, George. I think we need, as a country, a better way of getting to that amendment, because obviously we cannot rely on the people he's working with. And definitely, as we saw with President Biden, we cannot rely on the media, for sure.
I agree with you, Silvio. I agree with you. However, let's remember that the Senate and the House were controlled by the Democrats, and this White House was extremely, extremely protective of the president, and the media was protective of the president.
Right.
And unless the issue was brought forward to the Supreme Court, it was not, something like the 25th Amendment was not going to happen. I mean, everything that you just said would work under a balanced, realistic situation. However, I'm sorry to say that I just don't think that there was any reality in this past administration.
And that's the problem. That's a problem, that the 25th Amendment, the way it gets triggered is by a member of the cabinet and by the vice president. And there apparently wasn't anybody in the cabinet who had the strength to do it. And that I think is troubling, because when the people who wrote the 25th Amendment, they must have assumed that there would be an honest member of the cabinet.
Exactly.
And in this,
there would be honest politicians.
Yes. And I'm not talking here about perfect people, just people with common sense.
Yes.
I mean, how in the world do you run a country, a nuclear power like the United States, where you can get a 3:00 phone call? I know, well, the call can come at any time, but if it comes at midnight or whatever, and you have a president who doesn't even know he's president, I mean, it's frightening when you think of the
worst, the image that I keep conjuring up in my mind when I hear about this book, Uncharted, is that image of Biden, and I think it was about a year ago when he was in the garden, at the egg,
right,
at the egg,
at the Easter egg hunt,
Easter egg hunt. And he was wandering around by himself, and the bunny had to go get him.
Right.
And bring him.
No, I know.
That was, to me, that symbolized how perilous our situation was.
Yeah, and the Easter bunny was not just, it was protecting him, because somebody was asking him a question.
away from from
somebody
media.
asking a question. So the Easter Bunny came and said, "Hey, come on, let's go. You got to go." And just as he was getting a difficult
That is
question,
very. I mean,
well, that is very disturbing, George.
we can
Because this
laugh
is amazing.
about it. We can laugh about it. We can mock about it, but it's just not.
Well, it's disturbing, George. What if you get I mean, look, it can happen to any president. You know, the famous nuclear phone call.
Yes.
And who would have made the decision? I don't think Biden. There were, I'm pretty sure, moments in the day that Biden could not have made that call. So who would make it? I mean,
exactly.
the chief of staff. So anyway, what Gingrich was saying is that they should bring in the man who is the chief of staff, and he should come in and explain how decisions were made. I think it's I mean,
it is. I think that is very, very much.
Now, people are going to say it's a partisan investigation. Look, everything is partisan in Washington. But I think it's an honest question to ask him and to say, hey, who made the decision to pardon these people? Who made the decision to do this? I mean, he was pardoning all these criminals. Who was making that call? I think that's a fair thing. But let me tell you something else. One last thing here about the book that I just, this afternoon, I heard an interview with the two authors. And they were saying that the people who saw Biden every day, well, they kind of got used to it. It's a little bit like you can't see the forest from the trees type of thing. But it was the people who would see him like every 3 or 4 months. They were the ones who were in more shock, which is what happened with that congressman who saw him and said, my gosh, what is this?
They should have said something. I mean, if anything, people that congressmen, senators that were watching this from a distance should have sat down with the chief of staff and other politicians in the White House and said, you got to do something. I mean,
well, and I think it's important, George, pardon me for interrupting you, but I think it's important for the next time. I mean, we can't do anything about Biden now. He's gone.
Right.
But I think we may have another situation like that in the future.
Well, you never know.
You never know. You never know. And I would like to have a more objective way of turning on this amendment, or at least a way of relying on somebody.
And again, we have to be careful. I mean,
right.
This amendment and this policy so much depends on the honesty of the politicians.
Right. Well,
however, because so often I remember in the closing days of the Reagan administration, how often he was called by the Democrats who were controlling the Senate and the House at that point, that he was not cognitive. Right. I mean, I remember that, and he was very, very much cognitive.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And I just think that for the sake of the future, we need to have a more explicit way of fixing this kind of a problem. Now, another person, too, who gets a lot of heat in the book is the First Lady, who apparently had a lot to do with keeping people away from him. And that's another thing that has to be talked about. You know, she could have said it, too. She could have called the Senate majority.
Care enough. I mean, if you were having a problem,
right,
with a health issue, I'm sure that your wife would step in and say,
sure,
we've got to take care. I'm sorry, but Silvio can't do it right now. He's got to. We've got to take care of him right now.
I think, and that's where I think Nancy Reagan, for example, or any other first lady,
extremely.
Yeah,
I mean, Nancy was extremely protective.
Yes,
almost to the other extreme.
Right.
But again, if anybody knew the state of the president, it was Nancy. This situation, Jill Biden knew the situation and protected him instead of protecting the nation.
Yeah, and again, it makes you go back to the family issue. I mean, why would a wife allow her husband to be humiliated? Because there were times
the bunny. Really, again, I get back to the whole Easter bunny situation. That was very humiliating.
And when he went to Europe that time, where he was like,
where he was lost, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. and anybody, you and I were just watching his press conferences, and we
knew something was wrong.
Yeah, we knew something was wrong, and we were not close to him, the way some of those other people. So I think Gingrich is right. I think there has to be a joint session of the Senate and the House. I think maybe once they get past the budget, they can do something like that where they look at this and say, okay, not so much let's get back at Biden, or I'm not saying let's go lynch somebody. That's not the point. The point here is let's come up with a better standard so that in the future, if something like this happened, we have a better way that would trigger the amendment. Because listen, if there was ever a case for a 25th Amendment, it was Joe Biden.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, anyway, George, I want to thank you as always. Anything else that you want to add here at the end? Any speeches, any trips that you're making?
None whatsoever right now. We are just doing our podcast and doing our articles. We had I've got an article that I'm going to be posting sometime within the next 24 hours. San Antonio, the city council on Thursday passed an abortion travel fund.
I heard about that, but
I
heard about that. Yeah.
It's outrageous. I mean, what they're going to do is they are going to pay any woman that wants any person,
right? Yeah.
That wants.
Careful with that,
anybody who wants an abortion, they will pay for it to fly them out of the state and let them have it. And again, we've got a city that needs police officers. We've got a city that needs more sidewalks, but they are going to pay for somebody to fly without it.
I think didn't the Attorney General step in on that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. The Attorney General yesterday filed a suit against the city, and here we are. The city is going to spend legal funds to defend itself on this abortion issue, which they should not even be involved in, but yet they're going to do it.
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, I guess what they're saying is the woman cannot have the abortion legally in Texas, right? Because of the abortion ban, not the ban so much,
which is a lie. I mean, if a woman is they're using the health question issue again, and again that doesn't hold water, because the legislation, the law says that a woman that has been raped or or her pregnancy is the cause of incest, or that she is facing a
medical problem,
a medical issue, then she can have an abortion. And all that has to happen is that the doctors have to sign off on it.
Right.
However,
in this case, they're just saying
on demand.
Right. In this case, they're just saying, I got pregnant. I want an abortion.
I want an abortion.
Fly me to, I guess, Albuquerque or whatever, New Mexico. Yeah. That's
it's really outrageous. It is really, really outrageous.
It is outrageous. Yeah, it is. But again, that is, those are the priorities of a blue city.
Yep.
That's what it is. George, enjoy yourself in San Antonio today. Don't let it, maybe it's a good night for a fireplace.
Well, it's a good night to watch the Final Four tonight.
Well, that's true too. That is exactly right. That's the other good thing. Well, thank you so much, George. I really appreciate your time as always.
You got it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. Our good friend, George Rodriguez from South Texas. It is chilly here in North Texas, mid-40s. It feels like, I think the actual temperature is like 55 or something like that. But, it feels like in the 40s, I guess the wind and combination of the atmosphere, or whatever it may be. But anyway, this book about President Biden, there's a couple of books actually that came out. And this book written by these two people, it is really incredible what was happening in the White House and how he was being protected by the people around him. And worse than that, by many in the media who knew what was going on. And yet, I guess they were willing to go along with this situation. That is really shameful. That is really shameful. I think every one of those reporters should be asked the question, and that is, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you say something? But I guess, I wonder if anybody will ask him that question. Have a great weekend, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.